Former head coach of the Cowboys, NBC Football Night in America analyst, Notre Dame football analyst. Always great to see Jason Garrett back on the program. Coach, good to talk to you again. Let me put you in the Minnesota Vikings situation. J.J. McCarthy coming off an injury. Would you entertain the idea of bringing in Aaron Rodgers?
I don't like that decision for them right now. I think you want to create an atmosphere and environment for J.J. McCarthy to be the quarterback of your team. And I don't think you want to have a guy who's as accomplished as Aaron has been throughout his career. I think you probably want to have a more traditional veteran backup who can go in and play for short periods of time. I think Aaron Rodgers wants to be a quarterback of one of the 32 teams. I don't think he wants to be a backup. And I think you made that decision with pick 10 last year that J.J. McCarthy is going to be your guy, and I think you stick with it and create a great environment for him.
What are the Steelers doing, or what should they do?
I think they should really entertain going to get Aaron Rodgers. I really do. He played better when he was healthier at the end of last year. For me, when you analyze his career, a really interesting crossroads came when Matt LaFleur was hired as the head coach of the Packers. And Aaron had done things a certain way in the system for a long time. And Matt LaFleur had come from an offense where they were under center more with the quarterback. They ran the ball, play action, maybe a little different than Aaron wanted to play. And I think there was probably some tension between those two guys early on. But eventually they kind of settled that, hey, we're going to do some things that Aaron does well, but we're also going to do some things that I want to do as the head coach. I want to run the ball. I want to run play action stuff from under center. And they got to that marriage, and I think that worked out well for them. And so in Pittsburgh, I would try to do the same thing. I would not do what the Jets did and say, Aaron, you're the quarterback, but you're also the offensive coordinator, and let's play GM too, and you bring your guys in. I would fit them in and say, hey, this is the way we want to play in Pittsburgh. We want to play great defense. We want to run the ball, play action pass. And oh, by the way, we're going to create an environment for you, Aaron Rodgers, to do what you do best. And I would blend it that way. And I think at 41 years old, Aaron Rodgers would embrace that. I think he'd embrace maybe taking some of the burden off of him to do everything every snap like he did for a long time. I think he would understand playing for one of these incredible foundational teams in the Pittsburgh Steelers like he did with the Packers. I think he'd embrace that. And I think if he could fit into how they want to play, I think it could be a good marriage.
I'm wondering if you had contact with somebody before you signed them in free agency, legally, but like Mike Tomlin. If you're Mike Tomlin, would you reach out to Aaron Rodgers and say, let's not waste time here. If we can help each other, great. Did you ever do that as the head coach of the Cowboys to reach out to say, I need to get an idea where you are right now?
Well, I think you have to be really careful with tampering rules and all of that. I think everybody knows with how these free agency rules and logistics have changed in recent years that they have this dead period. There's a lot of people talking in the dead period. But I think you got to be careful about being direct. But I do think there are representatives that can talk to representatives, to get the idea out that, hey, we want you in Pittsburgh. What's your interest?
Is it a resurgence of the running back position?
Well, not in my mind. The running back position never left in my mind, and I don't want to be one of those guys, but I've been banging this drum forever. I played for the Cowboys for 8 years, and we won 3 Super Bowls, and our running back was Emmitt Smith, the leading rusher in NFL history. And I just saw the impact that he made on the entire team. The ability to run the football with a guy like that. We handed the ball to him 25 times a game. He made the offensive line better, and the offensive line was really good. He made the quarterback better, and the quarterback was really good. He made the receivers better, the tight ends better. He made the defense better. And all of those guys made him better. And it was just the way to play football. And we won 3 Super Bowls in 4 years. And I haven't changed from that. When I became the head coach of the Cowboys, that's the kind of team we wanted to build. We drafted linemen. We drafted running backs. DeMarco Murray in 2014 led the league in rushing. Oh, by the way, it happened to be Tony Romo's best year as a pro. Dak Prescott in 2016 won 13 games as a rookie. Oh, by the way, Zeke Elliott led the league in rushing. So the value of the running back, to me, has not changed. They're so impactful. And I've said this before, and Devin McCourty and I talk about this a lot. I think the New England Patriots and Tom Brady distorted the value of the running back. When Tom Brady's your quarterback, you can load up on defense. And you can only, you don't have to draft linemen real high, and you don't really need an every down running back, because he was so amazing at making the whole situation work. And then people said, hey, you don't need running backs. And not that they didn't have good running backs in New England. They had role player running backs. They didn't have the marquee guy that were going to hand the ball to 20, 25 times a game. And for me, that changed everybody's perception of running backs. That, hey, you don't need this guy. Well, maybe you don't if you have the best. If we're going to make Mount Rushmore of players, the first face you're chiseling is Tom Brady. Well, if you have that guy as your quarterback, maybe you don't need a running back. But short of that, the running back helps everybody else. And I do think it's fun for me to see the resurgence, because I think it's just a reaffirmation of those values.
We're talking to Jason Garrett, Football Night in America analyst. But that brings me to Ashton Genty. We had an analyst who said, reminds me of Emmitt Smith, but faster.
Did you tell that analyst that Emmitt Smith rushed for over 18,000 yards in the NFL?
Yeah.
And he was kind of good. If he reminds you of Emmitt Smith, but he's faster, you probably should draft him. And I just think you got to be careful of talking about reminds me of one of the greatest players ever to play in the NFL. But I can see what they're saying. He seems to be a guy that is not overly flashy, but is hard to tackle. He's got excellent contact balance, always finishing forward. Those guys make a difference on your team. And, we were talking on Football Night in America all year long, maybe the last half of the year, who's going to be the MVP. And in about week 17, I blurted out, how about Saquon Barkley? Right? I mean, do you think he had an impact on that team? The offensive line was great. I get all that. But when you have a runner who rushes for 2,100 yards in 16 games, and you don't think that's going to positively impact your quarterback? One of the best things that Kellen Moore did in the Super Bowl, Dan, is he kept running the football. Saquon, I think, was 24 carries for 57 yards. There were 47 Kansas City Chiefs on the line of scrimmage trying to stop Saquon Barkley, right? And all of a sudden, A.J. Brown has a big game, and these receivers. Well, it's because of the runner and the threat of the running game that you have to load people up and you create favorable looks outside, and it certainly helps your quarterback too. So if Genty is like Emmitt Smith but only faster, you should be the first pick of the draft.
The Commanders were a great surprise last year, but as I've cautioned people, they did win a lot of games on the last drive, last possession, last seconds, and it's hard to sustain something like that. Yeah, Jaden Daniels was wonderful, and they have gone out and gotten some other pieces here. And I do like that. But if you're going to handicap Commanders and the Eagles, what's the separation between those two, at least right now going into next season?
Yeah, I think Philadelphia is still a cut above. And Philadelphia is losing players. And that's what happens when you have a championship team like they do. And they're so talented. But Howie Roseman's done an amazing job building the team. And, we were talking about it earlier. One of Jeff Bezos's 14 leadership principles is great leaders are right a lot. And and when
wait,
you talk
can I become a billionaire if I come up with silly things like that?
Yeah, but it's true. If you simplify it, you got to be right a lot, and you have to be right in personnel, because ultimately that's what separates teams. You can have the greatest personnel process there is, how we talk about it, how we go out on the road, our reports, all that kind of stuff. But when it comes to nut cutting time and you got to pick a player, you got to pick the right one. And Devin and I were laughing about it with pick 199, the New England Patriots took Tom Brady. in the year 2000. Middle of the fourth round in 2016, we drafted Dak Prescott. There's a lot of other guys that you're talking about, you're thinking about, but you got to pick the right guys. And Howie's done an amazing job both in free agency and in the draft picking the right guys for Philadelphia. So even though they're losing guys, I have confidence in him to keep that thing going.
Can you be honest with me? Would the Cowboys have taken Connor Cook out of Michigan State if he was available, the pick before you guys took Dak? Connor Cook went, I think, to the Raiders. From what I was told, you guys were higher on Connor Cook than Dak Prescott.
Well, I'll take you through that whole draft. Right at the top of the draft, we had the fourth pick, and we drafted Zeke Elliott, which to me was a fantastic pick. He, really changed our team in so many ways. But the quarterbacks went first, Jared Goff and Carson Wentz, and then, the next guy up was Paxton Lynch. So there's conversation at the bottom of the first round about Paxton Lynch. Should we trade up? Should we do this? Should we do that? I mean, a lot of conversations about that. And then, there were other guys. I'm trying to think who was maybe in the third round. Somebody went, and then it got to Connor Cook, and the Connor Cook discussion was more about he played in a drop back system at Michigan State. He was under center. We felt like Dak Prescott was one of the 5 guys in the draft that could be a starting quarterback for us in the league. But he was a guy, and I'll be honest with you, I thought it was going to take him time because he played in the gun.
Yeah.
There was a lot of quarterback run. And at the time, that's not what we were doing. And so he had all the stuff, but it was like, he's probably 2 or 3 years away. Well, sure enough, he wins 13 games as a rookie. So there goes that part of the evaluation. But we had no doubt about Dak in terms of we were all in on this guy can be our quarterback in the future. It just seemed like Connor Cook was more ready to be our backup right now and then possibly the quarterback in the future. And Oakland traded up to get him. We fell back. We took a defensive lineman from Oklahoma in the fourth before we took Dak in the fourth. So, all those different things, when you reflect back on them, certainly fell favorably for us. But he ended up being an amazing pick and a great player for us.
So I was correct that you guys liked Connor Cook more than you did Dak Prescott.
We did,
okay.
And we had healthy discussions about.
But you guys like Paxton Lynch. Didn't Jerry love Paxton Lynch?
Yeah, and one thing that I always laugh about is that people go back afterwards in the draft and say, there's like revisionist history. You guys would have taken him. You guys would have taken. You literally talk about 300 players all day long. Hey, what would happen if this guy fell back? Would you trade up for him? So if you went back and transcribed those conversations, history would be different, right? There was always the story that Bill Walsh liked Steve Dills better than Joe Montana. Well, he ended up drafting Joe Montana. So
I got Cody Kessler, Christian Hackenberg, Jacoby Brissett. Those are the other quarterbacks that were taken before Dak Prescott.
Yeah, and we felt great about Dak. I'll give you a good story about that. Wade Wilson was our quarterback coach for years. I don't know if you remember Wade, but he passed away a few years ago. But he was one of my teammates. He played 19 years in the NFL and then was our quarterback forever. And Wade never liked quarterbacks. Like he would go work guys out. And in for the draft, and I would say, hey, Wade, what'd you think of that guy? He can't play. He can't play. He can't play. This went on for years, Dan. It went on for years. And I'm like, he can't play. I'm like, at some point, we got to like one of these guys. We'll never draft anybody. And I'll never forget it. I think it was a Friday night. He called me early March, leading up to that 2016 draft. And he said, I think we got one.
Oh, wow.
I said, what? He's like, yeah, I'm down here in Starkville, Mississippi. I think we got our quarterback. And he just raved about Dak. He loved him. And then I don't know if you remember this, like 2 weeks later, Dak gets a DUI.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, he was the face of the program. Everybody loved him, the whole deal. He had all the stuff you wanted. And he gets a DUI. And I'm like, hey, here's our guy. What the heck? And over the next month or so, we had some real aggressive conversations with Dak about the whole process. And I'll tell you the quick story. We used to do this thing for about 3 hours with quarterbacks we're thinking about drafting. We get them in a room, a quarterback room, and it would be me, and the time it was Scott Linehan, who was our coordinator, and Wade and some other people. And I would stand up there and I would put 3 plays in from our offense, 3 pass plays, 5-man protection, a 6-man protection, a 7-man protection. I would talk really fast, use all our jargon, give them every rule that we had, talk about defense. This is what happened, dot, 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 dot. And then I would erase it and say, okay, you're up. And now you got to give it back to me.
Yeah.
And I would interrupt them on purpose and talk really fast and see if they could retain information, see if they could spit it back, see how much football they knew, all that. But we had a real question about this thing with Dak Prescott, about this DUI, because it just seems so out of character for him. So we get him up on the board, and I'm talking really fast and put it all in, and I'm like, all right, you're up. It's an empty whiteboard. Give me the first play. And he starts talking and starts going through it. And about 10 seconds into, I'm like, hey, stop. Hey, give me the story about this DUI.
Oh,
Okay. And so I'm like, hey, get me to the bottom of this. And so he tells me the story. It was fantastic. It was so accountable and specific detail. I had a couple margaritas after the workout. I was going 38 in the 30. I got pulled over, whatever. I mean, it was like, and it was clean and it was direct and it was accountable and I'm sorry for it and whatever. All right, keep going. And so he draws up the rest of the play and we're asking him questions. I'm like, stop. Hey, go back again. You're the face of the program at Mississippi State. This whole thing, I'm peppering him. And he kind of stops and gives me another explanation. Okay. Third time, he's drawing up another play. I stop one more time and he turns and it was a great answer. He said, I said, tell me what happened again on this deal. And he said, Coach, I don't know what you want me to tell you. I told you exactly what happened. I took accountability for it, whatever. And it was just a Dak Prescott answer. And I said to myself, I need to be quiet. So he finishes up the interview and he's phenomenal. I can't tell you how good he is. Mentally, he's just off the charts. So sure enough, he comes to the Cowboys, has an amazing start to his career, all of that. Wade Wilson tragically passes away about 4 years later. So we're at the repast after the funeral. And Dak comes up to me and says, Coach, I never told you this story. He said, you remember you did that meeting with me before the draft where you were talking really fast and you kept interrupting me and all of that? I said, yeah. He's like, Wade Wilson told me all the answers to the questions before I went in there. He said, he's going to ask you this, he's going to ask you this, he's going to ask you this. So he said, when I got a little frustrated when you kept peppering the questions, I wasn't mad about the question about the DUI. I was mad that I was forgetting all the stuff that Wade had already told me. So it was a setup.
Oh, that's great. Always great to talk to you. Thanks for sharing, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you, Jason.
You got it. Thanks, Dan.
Jason Garrett, take a break. We're back after this.